March 15th, 1962, 2:30 in the afternoon. Vincent the Snake Torino was laughing. He sat in his usual back corner booth at Romano's restaurant in Little Italy, a white linen napkin folded neatly on his lap, a half-finished espresso cooling beside his plate. The laugh wasn't loud. It was controlled, confident, the kind of laugh a man makes when he believes the outcome is already decided. Across the room, his men were in position, two near the front windows, pretending to read newspapers, two by the kitchen door, standing just far enough inside to stay out of sight, two upstairs in the small apartment above the restaurant, watching through the curtains, and two more near the back exit, blocking the alley. 8 men, all armed, all professionals. For Vincent Torino, this wasn't a meeting. It was an execution scheduled for 2:30 p.m. 24 hours earlier, Torino had sent a message to Harlem. Not a request, not a negotiation, an order. Tell that black boy if he wants to talk about the docks, he comes to us. No bodyguards, no backup, just him. Everyone who heard the message knew exactly what it meant. It was a setup, the kind of setup that had ended dozens of lives over the past 30 years. A man walks into enemy territory thinking he's about to talk business. He never walks back out. Torino expected fear. He expected hesitation. What he didn't expect was Bumpy Johnson to actually show up, alone. When the door to Romano's opened and Bumpy Johnson stepped inside, Vincent Torino couldn't help himself. He laughed. Either that man's got the biggest balls in New York, Torino said to his underboss, Marco Santini, or he's the dumbest son of a bitch alive. Bumpy Johnson stood in the doorway for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light. He was dressed in a perfectly pressed gray suit, clean lines, no flash, no jewelry, no weapon visible. In his right hand, he carried a leather briefcase. Nothing else. No entourage, no muscle, no protection. Just a man walking into a room full of enemies who wanted him dead. What Vincent Torino didn't know, what none of the men in that room understood, was that the most dangerous weapon Bumpy Johnson carried wasn't in the briefcase, it was in his head. And in 90 seconds, the balance of power between Harlem and Little Italy would shift forever. To understand how it came to this moment, you have to go back 3 years. Back to the docks. By 1962, Bumpy Johnson was no longer just the king of Harlem's numbers racket. He had outgrown that title quietly, deliberately, while the Italian families were still measuring power by how many men they had and how many guns they could put on the street. Bumpy was measuring power and influence, money that didn't scream, businesses that looked clean, connections that didn't leave fingerprints, restaurants, barbershops, real estate, transportation, and finally, shipping. The docks were the heart of New York's underworld economy. Every crate that moved, every shipment that disappeared, every delay that magically got resolved, all of it flowed through Italian hands. For 30 years, the docks belonged to them. They didn't just control them. They owned them. Or so they thought. The problem was the world was changing. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum. Black longshoremen were demanding better pay, safer conditions, basic dignity. The Italian families ignored them, dismissed them, exploited them the same way they always had. Bumpy didn't. He listened. And then he acted. At first it was small, protection for black dock workers who were being harassed, transportation contracts that bypassed Italian middlemen, a few independent shipping deals that cut into profits, so small they barely registered. Barely. But Bumpy understood something most gangsters never did. You don't announce a takeover. You let it happen so slowly that by the time anyone notices, it's already too late. Vincent Torino noticed. Torino wasn't like the old bosses. He was young, smart, calculating. He'd taken control of his family at 28 and doubled their income in 5 years. He didn't rely on superstition or tradition. He relied on numbers, and the numbers told him something he didn't like. Money was bleeding out of the docks. Money that was ending up in Harlem. When his accountant showed him the losses, Torino didn't shout. He didn't rage. He smiled. The dangerous kind of smile. "This ends now," he said. "I don't care if he thinks he's the king of Harlem. On my docks, there's only one king." What followed was 3 years of quiet war. Torino sent men to intimidate Bumpy's workers. They came back in ambulances. He bribed supervisors to cancel contracts. Bumpy outbid him. He leaned on unions. Bumpy leaned harder. Move! Counter-move! Chess. But by early 1962, Torino was tired of playing. He didn't want to beat Bumpy. He wanted him gone. The problem was Harlem. Bumpy Johnson was untouchable there. 10 blocks into Harlem and Torino's men were spotted. 15 blocks and they were surrounded. Harlem wasn't just Bumpy's home. It was his fortress.
So Torino decided to change the board.
If Bumpy couldn't be killed in Harlem, he'd be killed in Little Italy. The meeting was planned with precision. Romano's restaurant wasn't just a place to eat. It was neutral ground in theory, but everyone knew it belonged to the Torino family. Deals were made there. People disappeared there. The plan was simple. Invite Bumpy under the pretense of negotiation. Demand he come alone. Threaten his people if he refused. Let pride do the rest. And when he walked in, let him sit, let him relax. Then erase him. Torino was confident. Too confident. Because while he was planning murder, Bumpy Johnson was planning survival. And revenge that didn't require a single bullet. The envelope arrived at Small's Paradise the next morning. A young Italian kid walked in, handed it to the bartender, and left without saying another word. Bumpy read the message once, then again. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. Illinois Gordon was the first to speak. "Boss, this is a trap." Bumpy nodded. "Of course it is. Then why even consider it?" Bumpy leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. Because traps work both ways. The room went quiet. Bumpy Johnson wasn't afraid of dying. What he was afraid of was losing control of the future. And Vincent Torino was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Bumpy Johnson didn't rush his decision. That was the first mistake most men made when they dealt with Vincent Torino. They reacted too fast. They let emotion lead. Fear, pride, anger. Bumpy did none of that. He read the message again later that night. Sitting alone in his apartment, the city humming quietly outside his window. The words were simple, polite even, but the meaning was clear. Come alone, or people you care about start dying. Illinois Gordon and Raymond Washington wanted action immediately. They wanted retaliation. They wanted blood before Torino could move. Bumpy listened. Let them speak. Let them burn off their anger. Then he raised one hand. "If we strike first," Bumpy said calmly, "we give him exactly what he wants." They looked at him confused. "A war," he continued. "A loud one. Guns, bodies, police everywhere. That kind of war doesn't end clean. And it doesn't end fast. So what's the play?" Illinois asked. Bumpy stood up and walked to the window. "We let him think he's winning." That was the moment they knew he had a plan. A dangerous one. That night, Bumpy made phone calls. Not to gunmen, not to hitters. To lawyers, to dock clerks, to union men, to federal agents who owed him favors or wanted something from him. Bumpy Johnson had spent years building something far more powerful than an army. He had built a network. Information moved through Harlem like electricity, and Bumpy controlled the switch. Italian families paid for silence. Bumpy paid for knowledge. Who was cheating? Who was talking? Who was scared? Who was already half broken? And Vincent Torino had more cracks than he realized. One name kept coming up. Paulo H., produced delivery driver. Gambling problem. Deep in debt. Known to Romano's restaurant like furniture. Invisible. Invisible men are the most useful. Paolo's younger brother Michael worked for Bumpy. A kid. 19 years old, smart, quiet, loyal. Bumpy called Michael into his office the next morning. Michael stood stiff, nervous. He respected Bumpy, but being summoned directly was different. "I need a favor," Bumpy said. "Anything, Mr. Johnson." Bumpy opened a drawer and slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was $500. Michael swallowed. "That's a lot of money." "It's also freedom," Bumpy said. "For your brother." Michael understood immediately. Paulo owed the wrong people. Dangerous people, the kind that didn't forgive. "I need him to make an extra delivery tomorrow," Bumpy said. "To Romano's." Michael hesitated. "What's in the crate?" Bumpy didn't answer right away. Then he said, "The reason I'm still breathing." Michael nodded. That was enough. March 15th arrived calm and bright. Too calm. Bumpy woke early. He showered, shaved carefully, put on his gray suit, the same one he wore when things mattered. Not because he expected to die, because he respected the moment. Before leaving, he visited his lawyer, updated paperwork, settled contingencies. Not fear, discipline. Then he met Agent Robert Davis, a quiet coffee shop downtown. Bumpy opened a briefcase and laid out documents, photos, manifests, recordings, gun running, smuggling, payoffs. Enough to bury Vincent Torino for decades. Agent Davis's hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages. "This is massive," he said. Bumpy checked his watch. "You'll want to move fast." "When?" 2:45, Bumpy said. "Give or take." Davis looked up. "Why so specific?" Bumpy smiled. "No reason." At 2 o'clock, Bumpy left his apartment alone. His men watched from the windows. They wanted to follow. He didn't let them. "If this goes wrong," he told them earlier, "it goes wrong because of me." The cab dropped him 3 blocks from Romano's. Bumpy walked the rest. He counted spotters, noted parked cars, saw the closed sign. Everything matched the picture in his head. At exactly 2:30 p.m., he opened the door. That's when Vincent Torino laughed. Torino saw what he wanted to see. A lone man, a briefcase, confidence mistaken for stupidity. "Sit down," Torino said. "Have a coffee." Bumpy sat. The room was quiet, heavy. Torino leaned forward. "You've been stepping where you don't belong." Bumpy nodded slowly. "Someone has." Torino smiled. That's when Bumpy opened the briefcase. Hands moved toward guns, but no weapon came out. Only paper, photographs, proof. Torino's smile froze. Vincent Torino stared at the photographs like they were poison. He didn't touch them at first, just looked. His eyes moved slowly from one image to the next. A dock warehouse at night. Men unloading crates that weren't on any manifest. A familiar face shaking hands with a man in a government suit. A close-up of serial numbers on rifles that were never supposed to be in New York. Torino's laughter died quietly. The room didn't change. The 8 armed men were still in place. The guns were still loaded. The exits were still covered. But the power in the room had shifted. Torino looked up at Bumpy. "You think this scares me?" he said. Bumpy took another sip of coffee. "No," he replied. "I think it explains me." Torino slammed the folder shut. "You walk into my place with paper?" he snapped. "You think paper saves you?" Bumpy leaned back slightly. "I think timing saves me." That was when Torino hesitated, just for half a second. And that hesitation was everything. "You see?" Bumpy continued. "Calm and measured. I already showed copies of that folder to people who don't drink espresso." Torino's jaw tightened. "Federal people," Bumpy said. "The kind that don't ask permission." Marco Santini shifted near the wall. One of the gunmen glanced toward the front window. Torino noticed. "So what is this?" Torino asked. "Blackmail?" Bumpy shook his head. "No, leverage." Torino laughed again, but it sounded thin this time. "You're still alone in my restaurant?" "Yes," Bumpy said. "But you're not alone in your crimes." Silence filled the space between them. Then sirens, faint at first, far away, but getting closer. Torino froze. He knew those sirens. Every boss did. You learned the difference between noise and danger early. These weren't random. These were coming here. Marco leaned down and whispered, "Boss." Torino raised a hand to stop him. His eyes never left Bumpy. "You set me up." Bumpy nodded once. "For 3 years," he said. "You were watching my docs. I was watching your mistakes." The sirens grew louder. Outside, a car door slammed. Then another. Torino's men started to move. "Sit," Torino hissed at them. They obeyed, barely. "You think the cops will save you?" Torino said. "I walk away from charges every year." "Not these," Bumpy replied. "Too many witnesses, too many records, too many people already tired of protecting you." Torino leaned forward. "You don't walk out of here alive," he said quietly. Bumpy met his eyes. "You don't walk out of here free." That's when the front door opened. Hard. Uniformed officers flooded the restaurant. Guns drawn, voices sharp. "NYPD, nobody move!" Behind them, men in suits, federal suits. Agent Davis stepped forward, badge visible. "Vincent Torino," he said. "You're under arrest for federal weapons trafficking, conspiracy and racketeering." Torino stood slowly. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He looked at Bumpy one last time. "You think this makes you king?" Bumpy stood too. "No," he said. "It makes me untouchable." Torino was let out in cuffs. His men watched, helpless. No shots fired. No blood spilled. No war started. Just silence. Bumpy closed his briefcase and walked toward the door. An officer stopped him. "Mr. Johnson." Bumpy turned. "You might want to leave town for a while." Bumpy smiled. "I already own it." He stepped outside into the afternoon light. The streets of Little Italy watched him walk away. Alone. Alive. Marco DeLuca's face lost all color. "You see," Elijah King said calmly, his voice low and steady. "While you were watching me, I was watching you." Marco tried to speak, but no words came out. Elijah reached into his briefcase and slowly pulled out a small tape recorder. He placed it on the table between them and pressed play. The room filled with Marco's own voice. "Tell Agent Harris the shipment is ready Thursday. Same route. Same payoff." He looks the other way. "Everyone wins." Elijah pressed stop. "You've been moving illegal weapons," Elijah said. "Using federal officers to pass them through the docks. The same docks you tried to block me from." Marco's hands began to shake. How did you know?" he whispered. Elijah leaned forward slightly. "Because I know everything that moves through those docks," he said. "Every truck, every crate, every envelope, even the ones you thought were invisible." Elijah opened the briefcase again and pulled out a folded document. It was a letter with official federal markings. "This," Elijah said, "is a copy of the report I delivered this morning, along with photos, recordings, and names." Marco froze. "By now," Elijah continued, "agents are already on the way." Right on cue, the sound of car doors slamming echoed outside the restaurant. Shadows moved past the windows. Men with badges surrounded the building. Marco's guards looked at each other. This was not part of the plan. You set me up, Marco hissed. Elijah stood and straightened his jacket. No, he said calmly. You set yourself up. He picked up his briefcase and looked down at Marco. I didn't come here to negotiate. I didn't come to make peace. I came to send a message. Elijah's eyes were cold. I see everything. And if you ever threaten me or my people again, I won't touch your business. I'll erase your future. The front door burst open. Federal agents rushed in with guns drawn. Marco DeLuca, one agent shouted. You're under arrest for weapons trafficking and federal conspiracy. As Marco was handcuffed, Elijah walked toward the exit. One agent stopped him. Mr. King, the agent said quietly. Thank you for your cooperation. Elijah nodded. Just doing what's right, he replied. As he stepped outside, Marco screamed behind him. This isn't over! You hear me? This isn't over! Elijah paused at the doorway and looked back. You're right, he said. It's just beginning for me. In less than 2 minutes, Marco DeLuca's trap had become his nightmare. By nightfall, the story spread across the city. Every crew, every boss, every hustler heard the same thing. Elijah King walked into a death trap alone and walked out free. Marco DeLuca faced decades in federal prison. That same night, the Italian families held an emergency meeting. One question filled the room. How did Elijah King know? The answer was simple. While others fought over streets, Elijah built connections. Dock workers who were tired of being used. Agents who were tired of corruption. Young men who believed Elijah was different. We misjudged him, one boss admitted. He's not reckless. He's strategic. So what do we do? Another asked. We stay out of Harlem, came the answer. Or we'll be next. Marco DeLuca was convicted in 1964. He died behind bars. Years later, still blaming Elijah King. But the truth was simple. Marco destroyed himself the moment he chose pride over sense. Elijah kept control of the docks. His operation expanded across half the waterfront. He used the money to fund schools, businesses, and jobs in Harlem. And the restaurant where Marco fell, it closed within months. No one wanted to eat where arrogance lost to intelligence. The story became legend for one reason. Marco had guns. Elijah had information. While others planned violence, Elijah planned outcomes. While they played checkers, he played chess. That was the difference. Real power does not come from fear. It comes from knowledge, and the smartest victory is letting your enemy defeat himself. Marco DeLuca learned that too late. By the time he realized the truth, his fate was already sealed.